Hey, how's it going? Dave2D here. So a few months ago at CES, I was at a Corsair presentation and they were going to reveal a product. And based on the emails that were kind of going back and forth between Corsair and I thought that they were going to reveal some super secret laptop. It wasn't. It was this thing, which is way better than a super secret laptop. This is my dream computer. This is called Corsair One. It's a pre-built 12-liter computer that holds a full-size GPU. Now, for comparison of size, this is a 2013 Mac Pro. It's around 5.5 or 6 liters. The average ITX case is around 18 to 20 liters. My micro ATX case is around 40 liters. It's pretty big. The Corsair One is 12 liters. It's small. On the exterior, it's a smooth black finish, really good build quality. None of the edges are nasty sharp or anything. Aesthetically, I like it. It's not for everyone, but I think they did a good job on the design. There's some lighting up front, but Corsair went against the grain, and instead of following the whole RGB trend we're seeing everywhere, it only lights up in blue. You can control the brightness and timing settings in software. The sides have these triangular perforations. They're for airflow, and you'll see in a minute why there's so many of them. The I/O is pretty good. I mean, it's a desktop PC running a full-size graphics card. On the back, we have audio jacks, AC Wi-Fi, Ethernet, the very important PS2 port, and 6 USB ports, one of them being Type-C, but it's not Thunderbolt 3. Up front, we have HDMI 2.0 and a USB 3.1, which is perfect for VR setups. A lot of companies have made small gaming PCs, but to see what makes this one special, you have to go inside. Opening it up is pretty easy. You press a switch and the top grille pops off. Underneath this grille is the main fan. It's a Corsair maglev fan. These things are awesome, lots of airflow and really quiet. You remove some screws and then you're inside. So this system is water cooled by 2 separate loops. On the CPU side, there's one loop that uses a thin 240mm rad. This is cooling a Kaby Lake 7700K, and you'll notice there's no fans on this radiator. The airflow to cool this thing is primarily coming from that maglev fan at the top. And then on the other side, the GPU side, there's another loop with its own rad. So this one's also a thin 240mm rad. The GPU in this unit, the review unit, is a water-cooled GTX 1080, but the base model has an air-cooled GTX 1070. So we have 3 fans, the big maglev fan up top, the fan on the GPU side, and then the fan inside the power supply, which looks like a SF400 from Corsair. These are supposed to be enough to cool this entire system through assisted convection. So cool air sucks in through the sides and then hot air rises out. The motherboard is on one side. The GPU, instead of just slotting in like it normally would, is connected using a riser, and then there's a PCIe ribbon that folds over to the other side. The 16 gigs of RAM are easy to replace. If you want to put in an NVMe drive, there's an M2 slot behind the motherboard, and there's 2 2.5-inch drive bays, but if you want to replace any of this stuff, the motherboard, the CPU, the GPU, just about everything. I mean, it's not going to be easy, it's a pretty cramped case, but it can be done. So I have to be honest, when I first saw this thing at CES, I mean, it looks pretty cool, and it's super small, and it's very quiet, but I wasn't sure how the performance would be because it's super packed in there, and a GTX 1080 and a 7700K get really hot. Now, these components have been benchmarked a million times, so I'm not going to bore you with too many numbers, but the performance was as expected for the CPU and GPU combination. Fan noise on idle is pretty quiet. It's not completely silent like a Mac Pro, but you can't really hear it. On maximum load, and we're not talking like a game here, we're talking like a stress test, it's definitely audible, but considering the horsepower the system has, it's still very quiet. Playing games on this thing is a blast. My G-Sync monitor is 1440p, so that's the resolution I play on. Even poorly optimized games run well on this thing because of how powerful the hardware is. And Witcher 3, still one of the most demanding games on the market right now, runs nicely, and this is with Hairworks on. And even when playing a game like this, the fans are still pretty quiet. The next thing I did was overclock it, and this is where I was most impressed. The 7700K was able to hit 5 GHz comfortably, and the GTX 1080, I was able to get it running at around 1900 MHz. The CPU temperatures were a little warm during these stress tests, but this is a solid overclock, and honestly, I think I could have gone further, but I got sucked into playing some games. So I usually play Overwatch on low settings for max frame rates, but here I'm running it on ultra graphics at 1440p. With the CPU at 5 GHz and the GPU over 1900 MHz, even after hours of gaming, temperatures were comfortable, system was stable, and everything was still quiet. The overclocking potential in the system is really impressive. Video editing is also really nice on this thing. It's fast and it's quiet. I work with 5K footage and this thing does a fantastic job with it. For VR, the Corsair One obviously handles VR really nicely. The GTX 1070 and the 1080 are well above the recommended specs for VR titles right now. And because the chassis is so small, you can just leave it out without being too much of an eyesore. So I had this system sitting in my living room for 2 weeks and my wife didn't care because it's small and quiet. The performance on this thing is awesome, and it's not just fast components, because anyone can just stick fast components into a case, but they have it properly cooled, so there's no throttling, and there's still room for overclocking, and the whole while they're doing it in a small case that's super quiet. Now in terms of pricing, the base model starts at $1,800, but the one I like the most is the Corsair One Pro, the one with the GTX 1080, and that costs $2,200, which is a lot of money for a desktop PC. Now some people are going to be like, why would you buy this thing when you just build your own custom PC for like $7? But I actually want to know, how much does it actually cost to build a 12-liter ITX system with these specs? So I went onto PC Part Picker, loaded up the configurator. Now you gotta pony up for a 12-liter case that can fit a GTX 1080. There's not many of them and they're not cheap. But once you get all the parts, I'm coming in at around $1,800. And that doesn't include the second rad that you would need to water cool the GPU. Once you get one of those and a maglev fan to kind of cool everything down the way they did it, it's gonna be like $1,950 or more, most likely more. So when you compare the price for $2,200 that Corsair built it, they're gonna slap a 2-year warranty on it, it's engineered properly, it's not that much of a premium. We're talking like 10-12% more than $1,950. That's pretty solid. So if you're looking for a small ITX system, I would highly recommend checking this thing out. I mean, ITX systems aren't for everyone, but if you are, take a look at this one because you can custom build your own, but it won't be nearly as like complete as this, like coming out of the box obviously, but building something that has this kind of thermal performance with this kind of fan noise is very difficult if you do it yourself in this form factor. That's the end of this video. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Thumbs if you liked it, subs if you loved it. I'll see you guys next time.